Hold on. Please stand by as we set up onto Facebook Live. Please stand by as we begin to record.
Please hit spotlight speaker.
Yes.
We will be beginning in just one moment. We're just waiting for the internet to talk to one another. Just one moment, please. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this important press conference to talk about the situation of Paul Rusesabagina. We will hear from members of Paul's legal team, followed by members of Paul's family. At the end of the session, the press conference will be taking questions. At the bottom of your screen, you'll find a Q&A function at the bottom right-hand corner. Please put your questions into the Q&A function, and we will answer them as they come in. At this point, I'm going to turn the press conference over to Professor Brian Endless. Brian, please take it from here.
Thank you very much, Kitty. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Kitty said, my name is Brian Endless. I've been a colleague of Paul Rusesabagina's for nearly 15 years now and have been working with his family and legal team during his time in jail in Kigali. Next week is the very sad one-year anniversary of the day that Paul Rusesabagina was kidnapped by Paul Kagame's Rwandan government. He was lured from his home in San Antonio, Texas, to Dubai, where he boarded a plane that he thought was going to Burundi. Instead, the plane took him to Kigali, Rwanda. There, he was tortured for 4 days and has been in jail and on trial since. He spent 250 days in solitary confinement in contravention of the UN's Nelson Mandela rules, and Paul has faced a sham trial with no credible evidence or credible witnesses. He has also been continually denied full access to his legal team throughout his time in jail. Tomorrow was supposed to be the day that his guilty verdict and sentence were announced, but we just heard yesterday that sentencing has been indefinitely delayed by the Rwandan courts. With this delay, Paul now has to sit in jail for more weeks or possibly months with his health deteriorating. Just a moment ago, I said guilty verdict because we have known since he was kidnapped that the verdict was going to be guilty. As one very wise European parliamentarian noted, no fair trial starts with a kidnapping. Paul was captured by a dictator who has been harassing and falsely charging him for years, and there is no doubt of where this trial is heading. This was never going to be a fair trial, and now that the formal trial portion is concluded, it is clear that it was not. Please don't take our word for it, though. The American Bar Association and Clooney Foundation for Justice reports on this trial have been damning, along with analysis from many other legal and humanitarian groups. Today, we are here to discuss the ongoing problems Paul is facing. Right now, at this moment, a member of our international legal team is in Kigali trying to get in to see Paul, and the Belgian foreign minister intervened to assist. But Rwandan authorities are once again putting up delays and denying him the right to see his client in prison. Vincent Lercan is Paul's personal Belgian lawyer and has been working on this case from that side. We will start with him telling us what is happening right now in Kigali. Vincent will speak in French, and another member of our legal team, Philippe La Rochelle, will translate and then provide perspective. Following that, our primary American lawyer, Peter Coharis, will talk about the international context of the situation, and that will be followed by Kate Gibson, a member of our legal team with significant experience inside of Rwanda, who will tell us about the impact of the postponed verdict. Finally, members of Paul's family will provide their perspective on the ongoing arbitrary detention of their father, and we will be happy to take questions. Right now, I'd like to turn the floor over to Vincent Lercan, who ironically enough is talking to us from the patio outside the pool of the Hotel Mille Collines in Kigali. Vincent.
En direct de l'hôtel des Mille Collines. Merci à vous tous de participer à cette conférence de presse. Et c'est effectivement à l'hôtel des Mille Collines qu'on vous accueille aujourd'hui, parce que pour Paul Rusesabagina, c'est aussi ici que tout a commencé. En tout cas, c'est ici qu'en 1994, durant le génocide, dans un Kigali, vous imaginez, à feu et à sang, il y a un homme, Paul Rusesabagina, qui a sauvé 1268 vies. Et ça, personne ne pourra jamais lui enlever.
So I am, if you allow me, Vincent, Vincent is currently at the Mille Collines Hotel, and there is the fact that he's there where everything started, where Paul saved over 1,200 people is very significant, and he wanted to stress that he's speaking to us from this place today. And I would ask you to make shorter sentence, please, to allow me to properly reflect what you are saying. Phrase courte, s'il vous plaît, Vincent.
Je vais essayer de réduire mes phrases. Mais donc, il l'a fait, c'est juste pour resituer un peu les choses, alors que la communauté internationale, une fois de plus, se taisait, que les forces de l'ONU ne pouvaient pas intervenir, et qu'il avait comme seule arme, celle qu'il a encore aujourd'hui, à savoir cette volonté, ce courage et cette liberté qu'il a prise de mettre en péril sa vie et également celle de sa famille.
The only thing he had back then when he saved all these people was his will, his courage. He put himself and his family at risk when he did that and saved all these people in 1994.
Alors aujourd'hui, vous savez que cette liberté lui a été confisquée. Ce matin, nous sommes encore allés, il n'est pas très loin d'ici, il est à une vingtaine de kilomètres, à la prison de Nyarugenge. On est allé, on a essayé d'entrer dans la prison, on a eu des discussions avec le directeur, et une fois de plus, après les décisions négatives du bâtonnier, du procureur, des ministres, on nous a malheureusement interdit de le voir.
As you know, he has been deprived of his liberty for nearly a year now. He's been detained here in Rwanda. Vincent is his lawyer in Belgium. And again this morning, he tried to go visit him at the prison, but he had no access to his client. He was deprived of the possibility of meeting with his client.
Alors évidemment que c'est un scandale, et je crois que nous devons parler de plus en plus fort, puisque le silence des autres se fait de plus en plus pesant. Parce que j'ai évidemment, comme avocat de Paul Rusesabagina, le droit de le rencontrer, et ça, aucune autorité dans un état de droit ne peut me l'interdire.
It's a real scandal that being Paul's lawyer, I'm deprived of the possibility to meet with my client. Normally, no state where rule of law prevails would allow such a situation to happen, and I should be entitled to meet with my client.
Et je suis d'autant plus en colère aujourd'hui que c'est bien sûr la liberté de Paul Rusesabagina, mais c'est aussi de nos libertés qu'on parle. Parce que en violant les droits les plus élémentaires, ce que le Rwanda fait, c'est également faire en sorte de faire que notre système judiciaire est également touché par cela. Il y a une sorte de virus juridique variant rwandais qui est en train de s'intégrer dans notre système judiciaire. Je m'en explique brièvement et concrètement.
I'm also very angry because what Rwanda is doing is also affecting the Belgian judiciary. There is a virus, a Rwanda variant virus that is contaminating the Belgium judiciary, because Paul was also facing procedures in Belgium where I am his lawyer, and the conduct of Rwanda is affecting what is taking place in Belgium.
Alors, vous le savez déjà tous, Paul Rusesabagina a été enlevé, nous en avons apporté la preuve, un enlèvement avec la complicité du régime rwandais, et cela, le ministre rwandais de la Justice l'a lui-même confirmé. Vous savez qu'il a été torturé, ligoté, bâillonné les premiers jours de son enlèvement. Et vous imaginez un peu ce que ça pourrait être dans nos prétoires, que quelqu'un qui a ainsi été enlevé, que quelqu'un qui a ainsi été torturé, ne puisse même pas avoir un avocat pour le représenter.
As you know, Paul has been kidnapped a year ago, and he was then tortured, gagged, tied, and kept incommunicado for several days. In a normal country with a normal judicial system, no trial could start with such events not being addressed, not being dealt with by the judges.
Ici, malheureusement, les juges se taisent et on doit bien considérer que la communauté internationale, en tout cas en ce qui concerne les gouvernements, se tait également. Mais je voudrais souligner également une chose que l'on n'a peut-être pas assez soulignée, c'est le fait que le gouvernement rwandais n'était pas sûr que tout le monde allait se taire.
So unfortunately, the judges, but also the international community, is not denouncing what took place, the kidnapping and the subsequent torture of Paul Rusesabagina.
C'est la raison pour laquelle en juillet 2019, les autorités rwandaises, le parquet général de Kigali, a demandé à la Belgique d'ouvrir une instruction à l'encontre de Paul Rusesabagina.
It's the reason, and this explains why the Rwandan government was also not sure about how the international community would react. And this is why in July 2019, the Rwandan authorities asked the Belgian authorities to open an instruction against Paul Rusesabagina in Belgium.
Un juge d'instruction a été désigné, M. Leroux. Pendant un an, il a enquêté. Nous avons été auditionnés. Pour ceux qui douteraient de la réalité, c'est le dossier 02-221-50 par 2019. Il y a des centaines de pages dans ce dossier. Il y a des perquisitions qui ont été faites. Et la dernière fois que j'ai assisté Paul Rusesabagina, il y avait à côté des deux enquêteurs belges, le procureur général du Rwanda et son substitut.
Judge Leroux in Belgium was tasked with instructing this case, and he did so for 1 year. During that year, there were hearings. So Mr. Rusesabagina was examined by the instructing judge. There were search and seizures at his home. The case bears number 022150-2019. And during that hearing where Paul Rusesabagina was examined by the instructing judge, the Rwanda was represented by the Attorney General and one of his deputies.
Le problème des autorités rwandaises, c'était qu'après un an d'instruction, de perquisition, M. Rusesabagina était toujours libre. Visiblement, il n'était pas inculpé de quoi que ce soit, et ce n'était pas le plan qui était poursuivi par les autorités rwandaises. Visiblement, il n'y avait pas d'arrestation qui allait se faire, et à ce moment, ils ont décidé de l'enlever.
The problem from the perspective of the Rwandan authorities is that after 1 year, Rusesabagina was still free. He had not been detained, he had not been arrested, he had not been accused of anything. Clearly, things were not going according to the plans. And it is at this juncture that they decided that the only solution was to kidnap him.
Mais la faute qu'ils ont faite, et j'espère cette faute grâce à laquelle on va pouvoir obtenir la libération de Paul Rusesabagina, c'est le fait que l'instruction belge, elle se poursuit. Et une instruction, quand elle est clôturée, ce qui va se faire maintenant, en droit, on va l'envoyer chez le parquet, au parquet, le parquet va faire son réquisitoire, et puis va le renvoyer devant les chambres d'instruction et devant la chambre des mises en accusation.
The mistake that the Rwandan authorities committed, and we are hopeful that this mistake can lead to the release of Paul Rusesabagina, is that the instruction by the Belgian magistrate is still ongoing. And at some point, he will have to ask for the closure of this investigation, and there will have to be a réquisitoire before the parquet, before the chambre d'instruction, which will lead, we hope, to a certain result that Vincent will be now talking about.
Et devant ces chambres d'instruction, il y a une nécessité, à savoir que les trois parties du procès soient réunies, les juges, le procureur, mais aussi l'accusé ou l'avocat. l'accusé évidemment ne sera pas là et l'avocat, savoir moi, refuserait bien sûr de le représenter parce que je ne l'aurais pas rencontré pour connaître son avis, pour travailler sur le dossier.
Before the chambre d'instruction, I'm sorry if I use French terms here, before the chambre d'instruction, the three parties must be present: the judge, the prosecutor, but also the accused, Mr. Rusesabagina. And because Vincent has not been able to meet with him, has not been able to work with him and to obtain to relay to him the information and to obtain his opinion as to what should happen before the chambre d'instruction, he will refuse to go there.
Alors je refuserai parce que, évidemment, c'est un droit élémentaire de la défense que d'avoir son avocat, mais je refuserai aussi parce que c'est un droit nécessaire. On n'est pas accusé comme ça, on est accusé de quelque chose. Et ce quelque chose, ce sont des centaines de pages de dossier. Il n'est pas possible de représenter quelqu'un que l'on n'a pas vu, avec lequel on n'a pas pu discuter du dossier. Et la conséquence de cela, eh bien, c'est que, et moi je refuserai, mon bâtonnier me soutiendra, le parquet général belge me soutiendra également, ainsi que les juges en disant tout est bloqué et finalement la procédure belge sera bloquée.
I will refuse to attend this hearing before the chambre d'instruction because Paul has been deprived of his most basic right, which is to be represented and assisted by counsel. It's basic, but it is a very necessary right because when you are accused, you are facing specific charges. What are the accusations here? There are hundreds of pages of documents that form the file of the instructing judge. But I know that I will be supported by the dean of my bar. I know that I will be supported by the parquet, and I know that I will be supported by the judge in not attending the hearing before the chambre d'instruction because everything is blocked. Nothing is possible. I have no access to my client despite all our efforts to allow for such an encounter to happen.
Alors le virus aura frappé, mais ce n'est pas possible de bloquer ainsi une justice dans une démocratie. Alors il faudra trouver les vaccins nécessaires. Un des premiers sera d'interrompre la coopération judiciaire avec le Rwanda, avec comme conséquence que la loi sur la compétence universelle ne pourra plus être appliquée à cause même du gouvernement rwandais. Une solution bien simple pourrait être le fait de continuer l'instruction en Belgique et non plus au Rwanda avec M. Rusesabagina, ce que les autorités judiciaires rwandaises avaient demandé précédemment.
So the virus has striked, but so we will need to find proper vaccines to prevent that virus from further expanding. And that vaccine will consist first in halting judicial cooperation between Belgium and Rwanda, because clearly it's not effective and yields no results. And that will also impact on the Belgian authorities' international jurisdiction if they're not in a position where they can meaningfully cooperate with Rwanda, then they won't be able to exercise this competence.
Voilà ce que je voulais vous dire aujourd'hui, c'est que la solution des autorités rwandaises d'empêcher tout n'est pas une solution qui est tenable. Alors, il faut de manière urgente bouger. Plein de parlements. Oui, vas-y.
So the solution or the attitude adopted by the Rwandan authorities of systematically blocking everything is not viable.
Des parlements ont déjà demandé et se sont indignés par rapport à la façon dont Paul Rusesabagina est traité. Mais en Belgique, il faut savoir que le ministre des Affaires étrangères, à 3 reprises, a fait des notes verbales pour demander que je puisse voir mon client. Et je vais d'ailleurs vous lire un communiqué de 3 lignes de la ministre des Affaires étrangères. Je demanderai à Philippe de bien le traduire. Vice-premier Wilmes, herhaalde ook het Belgische verzoek om de heer Rusesabagina in het kader van de procedure in België zijn Belgische advocaat te laten ontmoeten, wat nog niet is gebeurd. Ça, je vais peut-être le dire parce que tout le monde ne comprend pas le néerlandais.
So Vincent will translate this.
Pour vous dire que déjà en avril, on a un communiqué de presse de notre vice-première ministre qui en était à sa deuxième note verbale. Et ce qu'elle dit elle-même, c'est qu'elle rappelait également au ministre des Affaires étrangères du Rwanda qu'il fallait faire en sorte que l'avocat belge de M. Rusesabagina, dans le cadre de cette procédure en Belgique, doit pouvoir le rencontrer, ce qui ne s'est pas encore passé.
So there were Belgium sent on at least 3 occasions note verbal to Rwandans in order to facilitate Mr. Lurquin having access to his client in Rwanda. And what he read in that other language is a communique from the Foreign Affairs Minister of Belgium, where she denounces the fact that her colleague from Rwanda, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Rwanda, is not allowing Mr. Lurquin to have access to his client, Rusesabagina, in Rwanda.
Pour terminer, je voudrais vous dire que il faut vraiment que nos démocraties haussent le ton. On l'avait déjà dit, le Rwanda a franchi la ligne rouge quand il a fait enlever Rusesabagina. Aujourd'hui, il continue dans la même ligne. Et je viens de recevoir, il y a un quart d'heure, la réponse à 3 notes verbales qui avaient été introduites depuis 1 an.
It is important that countries denounce what is taking place here. There is a red line that's being crossed and that it should not allowed. And I will now share with you what I received 15 minutes ago. I finally received the answer to the 3 notes verbales that were sent from Belgium to Rwanda to request access to my client.
Et ils répondent, malheureusement, comme dit l'ambassade de Belgique à Kigali, négativement. Donc, ils refusent que j'aille voir mon client à la prison et je viens d'avoir la motivation sur mon mobile. Ils disent que le procureur général de Kigali a donné des instructions au juge d'instruction belge pour se dessaisir de son dossier. Mais dans quel monde vivons-nous? Est-ce que véritablement le parquet de Kigali peut donner des instructions à un juge d'instruction en Belgique sans que personne ne se lève et ne dise que c'est une chose qu'on n'a jamais vue au niveau judiciaire?
Vincent, what is the motivation that they have received from the Rwandan authorities for not allowing Vincent to see his client is that apparently the Attorney General or the Rwandan authorities have requested the Belgian judge to stop its investigation, which is a real scandal. He has never seen something like that a judge would be receiving instructions from foreign authorities about how to manage and how to lead his investigation.
Alors voilà, excusez-moi, je suis un peu fâché aujourd'hui parce qu'on vient de recevoir tout ça. Mais je crois aussi que en faisant ça, Paul Rusesabagina montre toutes les failles de la justice et en ça, il gagne quelque chose. Maintenant, il faut impérativement que l'on n'ait plus les yeux baissés par rapport au Rwanda, mais que l'on puisse redire au niveau du gouvernement belge et aux autres démocraties, que l'on puisse faire entendre sa voix et dire que la seule dignité qu'il y ait, c'est celle qu'il a maintenant en prison, mais que nous devons faire en sorte de pouvoir trouver une solution pour le libérer.
Vincent is saying that he's sorry if he's a bit angry today, but he thinks that what is happening is important because through Paul Rusesabagina, the cracks in the Rwandan judiciary are exposed, and he thinks that it is important to continue that fight, not only us, but also democracies. And it's about time that people open their eyes about the realities of Rwanda today and stop keeping their head in the sand about what is taking place there. And Rusesabagina is an important moment about denouncing what is taking place in Rwanda.
Merci à vous et merci à Philippe.
Thanks to you all, and thanks to me.
Thank you very much, Vincent and Philippe, for translating. Philippe, perhaps you can put this in a little bit of personal context. You've had experience in Rwanda accessing clients and witnesses, and maybe you can tell us what's normal there or what's abnormal in Paul's case.
Well, there is a normal moment before they kidnap. So my name is Philippe Larochelle. Sorry, I'm a lawyer in the bar of Quebec in Canada. And I've been working in Rwanda or Rwandan cases since 20 years now, since 2000. and won. I'm used to go to Rwanda, to go there regularly. And I even have a client who's detained in Rwanda. And what I was going to say is that there was a moment before the kidnapping of Mr. Rusesabagina, and there is a moment after the kidnapping of Rusesabagina, in that my personal experience is that I was never blocked, or I had never any difficulties in accessing my client who's detained in Rwanda. It's never been a problem. It's never been an issue. And the moment where I was retained to be part of Mr. Rusesabagina's international team is where everything started to be problematic. From that moment, they blocked me. They've blocked me from seeing Paul. I was actually in Rwanda with Vincent Lurquin last year in October when we tried to have access to him, and we were blocked at that moment. But I was also blocked on the same occasion from seeing this client that I had always been able to see without any difficulties. So that's why I'm saying that things are deteriorating in Rwanda as far as I'm concerned. Being able to have access to my client and consult with them is concerned. That's what I can add as far as my personal experience is going.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I'd now like to turn to Peter Coharis. Peter is our lead American lawyer working on advocacy issues. He's also an international human rights lawyer with significant experience in the international field. And Peter, perhaps if you could put this case into context and put what Vincent has been talking about and other things here into an international context.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. I'll speak only briefly, I hope. I just wanted to elaborate briefly on Brian's observation about the lack of due process. I'm sure by now all of you have heard our complaints about our filings, both with respect to the Rwandan courts, but also before the UN Working Group Against Arbitrary Detention, and also the Special Rapporteur on Torture, about the violation of Paul's due process rights. It's, as Brian observed, it's not though just take the word of the ABA or in the Clooney Foundation, which is absolutely true, he's correct, but also there's no debate about the facts. There's absolutely no debate by the Rwandans about basic facts that Paul has been denied, not on occasion or routinely, but constantly. Every single written communication that we have tried to send to Paul has been, the attorney-client privilege has been violated every single time. His lawyers, his local lawyers have been searched, and recording instruments, writing instruments have been searched, have been seized before being returned. So this is not, an ongoing problem. It is a fundamental problem that in and of itself has denied him any chance of a fair trial. But the outrageousness has continued in terms of under both in Rwandan law, Article 111, and also under international law and under American law, there is a presumption of innocence. In Rwanda, there has been a public, high-profile presumption of guilt. Multiple statements by President Kagame and the Minister of Justice have pronounced Paul to be guilty and to be a criminal and to have engaged in criminal activities even before the trial began, let alone before waiting for an actual verdict. That's why when Brian spoke about the presumption that we have that there'll be a guilty verdict, that's not cynical, that's been preordained since the start, based upon the record that's taken place in Rwanda. And there's been a complete deprivation of his access to international counsel. And I've heard the ministry come up with various rationalizations for why that's the case, but all of which are wrong. But I would simply observe that there's no rationale for at least not allowing us to confer, to go to Rwanda, to confer with the defense team, to confer with Paul, and to develop strategy and to help with various objections or various stratagems. We were completely and have continued to be completely prohibited from doing that. And then again, a complete deprivation of any meaningful opportunity to review the record, the evidence. And these are, I'm not even exhausting all of the examples, but the violation of due process, now we learn today, isn't just limited to Rwanda. It's now the Rwandan authorities are trying to extend that violation of due process externally, extrajudicially, to the courts of Belgium. And I was going to make the case that by barring Vincent from visiting his client, what they're trying to do is interrupt the Article 128 of the Belgian Criminal Investigation Code proceeding, whereby Paul could seek a non-lieu, which is a declaration that there's insufficient evidence to proceed with a criminal proceeding, an indictment by the pretrial chamber. But the Rwandan government has made the point for us. As Vincent just said in reading his the filing they made with the Belgian court just moments ago, they're now actually trying to shut down a Belgian judicial proceeding. This really is outrageous, unprecedented, and I fully expect, and Vincent can obviously speak to this as the expert, but that the Belgian court will dismiss this and see this for what it is. But again, we're having a deprivation now of due process rights cross-border, extrajudicially. And I've not witnessed this before. It just compounds the outrageousness that we've been experiencing during the trial with respect to the lack of rule of law. And so I would just leave you with not a pronouncement, but questions. Ask yourself, are these the actions of a government that is following the rule of law, both internationally, under Rwandan law, and now under Belgian law? Are these the actions of a government that is pursuing justice? And are these the actions of a government that is seeking to uncover the truth with respect to the allegations against Paul? I think all of us know the answer to that. And let me turn it back to Brian.
Thank you very much, Peter. Excellent perspective. And I think those questions are really central to the case. I'm going to introduce Kate Gibson now. Kate is our Australian lawyer with significant experience inside Rwanda. She's going to talk to us briefly about the postponed verdict and where we're at and where we may be going from here in the trial. Kate?
Thanks very much, Brian. And thank you to everyone for joining us today for this really important discussion. And particular greetings to our confrère in Kigali, Maître Lequin. Thank you for all your efforts and bravery on the ground. Briefly about the delay in the judgment rendering. There's been a lot of speculation already about why the delay in the verdict might have happened and what it means. The only people with answers to those questions are within the Rwandan judiciary and the Rwandan government. And we're really not in a position to speculate. But what we do know is that the evidential record in this case, in this trial, is very, very weak. The prosecution only called 2 witnesses, apart from the co-accused, in a case against 21 people. And neither of those 2 witnesses had any direct knowledge about the events that are the subject of the charge. Even the prosecution said, we're bringing these witnesses for context, for background information. And this is after the prosecution asked for a delay in the start of the trial so they could investigate more. And this is after a decision was taken to kidnap Paul rather than seek his lawful extradition from Belgium or the US, because there wasn't enough evidence to support an extradition request. So this lack of evidence has been an ongoing problem. And when the evidential basis in a case is so limited, of course, we can imagine that trying to piece together a credible judgment, and particularly a judgment that's going to have so much international scrutiny on it, that would be really, really difficult to do. And that might explain why the judgment doesn't yet exist. But whatever the reason, and our focus isn't on why, our main concern as Paul's legal team and larger team and family is the impact of this delay on him. And we're nearly at the 1-year mark, right? So that means that Paul has been detained for a year in conditions that are absolutely objectively detrimental to his health. The conditions of detention at the Nyarugenge Central Prison don't meet international standards. And we've seen this when the co-accused in Paul's case actually came to court and pleaded with the judges at this hearing on the 24th of March, asking for their conditions to be improved, saying things like, you know, some people have mattresses because their families have brought them. Most people are sleeping on a concrete floor. They told the judges they only have this one meal of corn between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. And that means if they're taken to court, they don't eat for 24 hours. And it's really hard for them to concentrate when they're so hungry. And can anything be done? You know, it was really hard to hear, actually, but it gave us this corroborated insight into what the conditions really are like inside this prison, which Philippe and I have seen ourselves firsthand many, many times. Paul is 67. He needs prescription medication to regulate a heart condition. The Rwandan prison authorities have his medication. The Belgians gave it to them last September. They will not give it to him. And the authorities being open about the fact that they won't give it to him. He's dizzy every day. He has headaches every day. He told his Rwandan lawyer he falls down from a standing position every day. But worse than that is that Paul is in remission from cancer, and he's now missed 2 screenings to make sure that he's still in remission from cancer. So in addition to him not getting any exercise or nutritious food or, you know, sunlight or fresh air, he's not even getting checked. And that's a huge source of stress for him, in addition to all the other stress factors that are on him as a result of having been kidnapped and tortured in the conditions he's now in. So against that backdrop, the decision of the Rwandan authorities to delay this judgment just means that Paul is continuing to sit in prison as his health deteriorates and his access to the outside world is just getting more and more limited. And there's just no reason apart from, you know, abject cruelty to keep someone in that sort of situation. Those are the points I wanted to make, and I'll pass back to Brian.
Thank you very much, Kate. It is a horrific situation. We do want to turn it over to Paul's family to close out the presentation part of our press conference. I'd also like to remind everyone before introducing them that, we will be taking questions. There is a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. If you could please type your question into the Q&A. If there's someone you're asking it of, please include that. If not, we will figure out who the best person or people to answer the questions are. To start with the family discussion, we have several of Paul's daughters here. I'd like to begin by introducing his oldest daughter, Rusesabagina, and if we can have some translation from Karine or Anais, please. Thank you very much. Lise.
Yes, thank you very much, Brian. En fait, j'aimerais vous parler de la situation de papa et du ressenti de la famille. C'est très, très difficile parce que ça fait déjà 1 an, ça fait presque 1 an jour pour jour que papa vit dans des conditions inhumaines. Comme tout le monde le sait, il a été kidnappé. Le Rwanda continue à violer toutes les lois internationales et nationales. Donc, le Rwanda est mauvais élève. Papa souffre dans tout ça parce qu'il a des problèmes de santé, des problèmes très lourds. Il a toujours les maux de tête. Il a la tête qui tourne. Il a maintenant les maux de dos. Il se plaint souvent et tout ça, c'est à cause des médicaments qu'il ne prend pas. Ça fait 1 an qu'il ne prend pas ces médicaments réguliers. Et on implore vraiment, mais de tout cœur, le gouvernement belge, plus spécifiquement le ministre des Affaires étrangères, Madame Wilmès Sophie, et le Premier ministre Alexander De Croo, pour qu'on puisse nous aider à ramener papa, parce que ceci a déjà été fait dans le passé pour le cas du père Gutenus. Donc tout ça, ça peut aussi fonctionner. Donc on compte sur la Belgique.
So I would like to share with you our father's situation and how our family feels. As you all know, it's been almost 1 year that our father has been in this deplorable situation. All of this because the government decided not to respect the rule and to break international law, take away his rights, all his right to human rights. And his health today is deteriorating. Like Kate said, you know, he's a cancer survivor. He doesn't get his medication. He hasn't gotten his medication for almost a year. He's living in deplorable conditions. And we are very, very worried for him. And that's why we are here to ask for your support, specifically for the Belgian authorities. We know that in the past, the Belgian authorities have managed to bring back Father Guy Tenis in 2004. And now we ask the Belgian authorities to also do the same for the father who's living under these conditions. And so we ask specifically Prime Minister Alexander De Croo and Foreign Minister Sophie Wilmès to come and support our family and help us bring our father home. Thank you very much for everyone, and thank you for supporting us.
Thank you very much, Lise. I'd now like to turn it over in closing of our presentation to Karine and Anis, Paul's two youngest daughters. And if you can please, again, let us know what the family is thinking and feeling as dad has been in prison for almost a year.
Thank you very much, Brian. So in addition to kidnapping our father, to torturing him, to depriving him of every single one of his legal rights, the Rwandan government, we also found out that the Rwandan government was spying on me and on our family and our entire legal team. We found out through forensics report and forensics analysis from the Amnesty International Security Lab, as well as a collective of journalists from Forbidden Stories, that my cell phone had been infected with the Pegasus software. That means we were able to look at specific dates and times through the forensics analysis that the Rwandan government has been listening into our calls, our team calls with our entire legal team, the strategies that we discussed to try to get my father home. This is in addition to every single one of my father's rights that's been violated. They're also coming after us and violating our privacy. This is an invasion of privacy, but also an invasion of violation of our father's rights to defense. They're intercepting every single one of our calls and our conversations. They're intercepting our meetings with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, with the State Department. So this government has gone far beyond any reasonable or any thing that's okay. We need the international community to put more pressure on Rwanda. And I would like to conclude by asking President Joe Biden, as well as Kamala Harris, to stand up for their resident and to bring him back and to demand Paul Kagame releases our father immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Karine and Anis. Thank you, everyone. Kitty, if I can pass it back to you for Q&A, please.
Yes, thank you. Again, journalists, if you have questions, please look at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A function, and you can put the questions right in the Q&A function. The first question is for Monsieur Lequin, for Vincent. What does Vincent believe are the chances that, and Philippe or Karine, perhaps you can translate for me. What does Vincent believe are the chances that Paul could be released to attend his hearing in Belgium, thereby achieving the goal of getting him out of the hands of Kagame and his henchmen?
Donc, la question, Vincent, est quelles sont les chances de succès, à ton avis, que Paul puisse effectivement participer à l'audience qui aura lieu devant la chambre d'instruction et qu'on réussisse enfin à le libérer des mains de ses bourreaux à Kigali?
Quand on parle de chances de succès, j'avais compris ça parce que c'est. Mais on a un cas, et Lise en a parlé, qui est vraiment un cas identique. Donc en 2005, il y a un prêtre belge qui allait au Burundi. On a fait atterrir l'avion à Kigali. Il a été mis en prison et avant le jugement, il a eu ce qu'on appelle un acte de transfèrement.
So there is it's difficult to talk of chances of success, but we can certainly refer to a case from the past, and that is the case of Father Guy Teunis, who was apprehended while in an airplane in Kigali airport. And his situation was resolved thanks to what is called an act of transfer.
C'est une procédure qui est négociée par les deux parquets généraux. Et au niveau de Teunis, il y avait un problème, à savoir qu'il n'y avait pas d'instruction à sa charge. Et donc, on a ouvert une instruction à sa charge pour Paul Rusesabagina. L'instruction est déjà là, donc les conditions existent pour que l'on puisse le faire.
Actually, the conditions in Paul's case are better than they were in Father Teunis' case. What happened in the case of Father Guy Teunis is that it was a negotiation between the parquet, or the office of the prosecutor of Belgium, and of Kigali. And what they did is that they opened up an instruction in Belgium so that he could face justice in Belgium. But in the case of Mr. Rusesabagina, the instruction is already open in Belgium, so it should not present a difficulty for him to be transferred there.
Et donc, cette procédure ne signifie pas qu'on abandonne toutes les charges, mais signifie uniquement que c'est en Belgique qui va être jugé, ce qui serait quand même plus serein, me semble-t-il, par rapport à ces conditions d'arrestation, de détention, je n'y reviendrai pas. Et c'est le fait aussi que ce sont les autorités rwandaises qui avaient demandé aux autorités belges de s'en saisir. Donc, je trouve que ce serait là une solution.
So Vincent thinks that a normal solution would be for the Belgian justice to finish its mandate. And he likes to remind us that the mandate of the Belgian justice system came from the Rwanda. It was a request from the Rwandan authorities to investigate the case of Mr. Rusesabagina. So it would be normal that it concludes there as well.
Et alors, juste pour répondre complètement à la question, j'ai un dossier dans lequel, effectivement, on ne l'a pas fait. Donc, il y a eu, dans le pays d'origine, une condamnation à perpétuité. Et sur le même dossier, en Belgique, nous venons d'obtenir un non-lieu parce qu'il n'y avait aucune charge qui était retenue contre la même personne. Et là, je vous avoue que c'est alors très compliqué, mais on va devoir alors négocier. Mais voilà, donc si tout continue parallèlement, un risque est d'arriver à une situation comme cela pour Paul Rusesabagina.
So Vincent is mentioning that he has a similar case where someone was convicted in a foreign country and there was a non-lieu in Belgium. So he has yet to see the outcome of that case, but it could instruct us on what will happen in the case of Mr. Rusesabagina.
Thank you, Philip. Before the next question highlights a situation which has become really, really a problem in Rwanda. And before I read it and turn it over to the lawyers, I just want to mention that since Paul has been kidnapped, and we have put the spotlight on what happened to Paul, it's not like the Rwandan government has stopped this behavior. Since Paul has been kidnapped, other human rights activists have been thrown in jail without cause. When people speak out, they've been and put things on video or social media, they've been arrested, they've been put in jail. Journalists have disappeared, journalists have been killed. Political parties, when they have stood up to say we're going to register as a party, all of a sudden fabricated charges have been made against them. Since Paul has been arrested, the assault on human rights, the assault on journalists in Rwanda has gotten worse, not better, which brings me to the next question. The question is, Paul's case is deplorable. Do we know of other less prominent cases that are also underway? And that's a question probably for Kate or Philippe.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. As Kitty said, those of us who've been working in and around Rwanda for a while have really seen something very sinister happen over the last 12 months, which is a real increase in the suppression of civil space, and an increase in what we would characterize as arbitrary arrests of political activists, members of civil society groups who are speaking out against the Rwandan government. This is not new. We're all aware of very high-profile cases in the past of political opponents being put in prison, particularly on terrorism charges. I'm thinking obviously of the case of Victoire Ingabire and Diane Rwigara, who faced criminal charges after signaling their intention to try and run against the president of Rwanda. But in recent months, since Paul's kidnapping, probably the most high profile of these is Yvonne Indamanje, who was arrested in February. She's a woman who speaks out on YouTube against the government, and she started to gain a following, and she was arrested in quite dramatic conditions, being dragged from her home in front of her children, and she still is in prison in Rwanda. There are a lot of groups, particularly diaspora groups, who are shining a light on this practice, and it's sort of a privilege to be able to work in relation to Paul's case to contribute to those efforts. I will also note that Paul is on trial with 21 other co-accused. One of the things that I find most scandalous about Paul's case is that the central piece of prosecution evidence, if you can call it, against Paul is a statement that he signed on the 31st of August, so just on the day as his torture finished, in the absence of a lawyer. A document of that kind signed by someone who's just been tortured and who hasn't had any legal advice would not be admissible in any jurisdiction in the world that practices the rule of law. But to the same extent, Paul's co-accused were also gave statements to the prosecution while they were detained. And one of the most interesting parts of the trial for us, and remember that the trial is all online, it's accessible, we can watch it, you can see for yourselves what happened. One of the most interesting aspects is towards the end of the trial, you see these co-accused become emboldened and stand up and say, I know I said this in my statement, but I said that because I was forced to say that. I was being held in inhumane conditions. The prosecution interrogated me 8 to 10 times. I had no choice to say except what they wanted me to say. And I had to sign this statement, and I didn't even get to read it. They told me because of COVID, I couldn't touch the paper and read it. So even within Paul's trial, this sort of microcosm, we're seeing these violations going on. I should stop. I've gone way outside the question, but that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Can I add a few words on this? Do we have
Please.
recently also we've seen the case of Aimable Karasira, who was arrested and whose case is documented by Human Rights Watch. There's more calls now to address the mapping report, which is a big case of impunity on the that the Rwanda government is using. Kizito Mihigo is a case that's still, it's everywhere you look across the board. The Rwandan judiciary is just a tool in the hands of the executive. If you look at the investigation that the South Africans are doing in the murder of Patrick Karega, Rwanda refuses to extradite the suspects to South Africa. So it's not, and even kidnapping, which is a drastic measure, goes way back. I remember, and Kate will remember the case of Agnes Ntamiabaria Bilo, was kidnapped from Zambia by the Rwandan authorities. So anyone who dare speaks out against Rwanda is in danger, and Rusesabagina's case illustrates that, and it sends a strong and shivering message to anyone who would dare speak out against the abuses that are taking place in Kigali.
If I can briefly add in too, Kitty, there are 3 sources I think we need to all be looking at that have come out just in the past year with this type of information. Human Rights Watch put out an excellent report on repression across borders that talks about the Rwandan government not just acting inside of their own country, but in other countries, Belgium, Europe, and in the United States, among others. Freedom House just put out a report
Yes.
since Paul was in prison on transnational repression, and Rwanda is one of the top 8 countries that they feature that reaches across borders to repress dissidents. They don't just go after dissidents in their own country. This has been receiving a lot of attention from human rights-based organizations. And then finally, one source that most people probably don't know about, there are many Rwandan diaspora groups who track these things and who follow Rwandans who are imprisoned when no one else does. One of them is a group called Rwandan Lives Matter. That's their website. And they put out a report called Yearn for Justice. All this particular report does is list Rwandans who have been killed inside or outside of their country by the Rwandan government. Since 2016, there are nearly 300 Rwandans who have been killed, not to mention the countless thousands who have been harassed and jailed, 300 who have been killed by the Rwandan government, and almost none of their names are known outside of the Rwandan community. This is endemic.
Thank you very much, Brian and Philippe and Kate. The next question is for the entire legal team, but probably Peter, if you could take the first crack at it. For the entire legal team, what would be the most effective action for the US government to take on Paul's behalf? Peter, can we hear your thoughts, please?
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to add one other thing to the last question. I'm also, in addition to my private practice, on the board of Freedom Now, which is enjoying its 20th anniversary this year. It's devoted to freeing people who've been unlawfully detained throughout the world. And you sometimes hear, and I just want people not to be fooled, because the Rwandan government does this quite often. And they push back and say, well, two things. Well, you see, Paul is being treated the way everybody else. So there's no discrimination. And so his rights are being observed under Rwandan law. And, you know, if to the extent that you criticize the conditions in the prisons or our procedures and how our courts function, you know, this is a Western implied racist or colonial or imperial view, and you're condescending to us. And this is wrong as a matter of law. The Rwandan government freely joined and is bound by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The Rwandan government freely joined and is bound by the Convention on Torture and Cruel and Inhumane Treatment. This isn't about, you know, African justice or Rwandan justice and how the West is imposing its standards on Rwanda. These are violations, fundamental violations of international human rights that Rwanda itself recognizes and agreed to be bound by. So don't be fooled that if just because others are being treated this way that, you know, or deplorably, that somehow that justifies or makes Paul's treatment less outrageous or less a denial of his human rights. So I just wanted to be clear on that, because you hear that a lot coming from various quarters in the Rwandan government. With respect to the US government, it's true that I've been working closely with the State Department, and I think we're going to continue to work closely. And I'm not going to go into detail now about what that work entails. I will note that unlike at the beginning of the trial, where we saw communications and public statements calling for a free and fair trial, we don't see those anymore, because I think there is a broad recognition, not only in the United States, but throughout Europe and internationally, that the opportunity for a free and fair trial has long ago vanished. But beyond that, the legislature, the Congress in the United States, both House and Senate, has twice now, on a bicameral, bipartisan basis, first in December, I think it was 33 leaders in the Senate and House Foreign Affairs committees and Defense and National Security committees, and then 41 senators and members of the House of Representatives more recently have called first for Paul's release, and then secondly for the State Department to take greater measures to obtain his release. So these efforts by the legislature in the US government join those in Europe, the European Parliament, and even most recently, the Parliament of Belgium, in calling for Paul's release and expressing concern about the fundamental denial of Paul's human rights. So I do think there's a recognition already in the United States government that we need to bring back Paul as quickly as possible. And we are working closely with the State Department about trying to do that. And I'll just leave it at that.
And Peter, stay right there because the next question is related for you. Has there been any contact with the U.S. Embassy in Rwanda? Could they have any influence if they were to ask about the case? So why don't you go ahead and take that?
Sure. As many of you know, Ambassador Peter Vrooman has been nominated to be ambassador to Mozambique, but he remains in Rwanda. He's not, to his great credit and to my great gratitude. He remains in Rwanda. I have been speaking extensively with Ambassador Vrooman for many, many months. When I say our efforts and communications with the State Department, it includes certainly Ambassador Vrooman, who's been very supportive and hoping that we can move forward on some initiatives before he is confirmed and moves on, which I fully expect he will be, and moves on to his post in Mozambique. So he has opted to remain in Rwanda and work and continue his duties as an ambassador. And Paul's case is clearly one of his priorities, and we're grateful for that.
Thank you very much. The next question is, what kind of financial pressure could be brought to bear on Rwanda, given its overwhelming reliance on international support and aid? And before anyone answers that, I also just want to say, unfortunately, what we found recently is it's not only that Rwanda is relying on international support, but there's actually been some direct investment by the United States government and United States industries that we're going to be highlighting in the next few weeks with some press releases about how the US has been directly investing in Rwanda. But would anyone else like to talk about the type of financial pressure? Anais, maybe you'd like to talk about the Magnitsky Act and what's been happening there?
Sure, yes. So right now, what we've learned, the Rwandan government does receive a lot of financial support from other countries, but this kind of support is for the people. And the last thing our family would like is to have the Rwandan people being hurt and affected by aid. But there is other means to have financial pressure on the people who have done wrong, not on the entire population. And this is through the Magnitsky sanctions. Just recently, the Lantos Foundation for Human Rights filed the Magnitsky sanctions on the Minister of Justice, Busingye, and on the chief spy of Rwanda, who were all involved in the kidnapping of my father, who committed this illegal act and who should be living the consequences of doing that illegal act, and not the Rwandans. And so the Magnitsky Act can help by freezing assets of these people who violate human rights, and who can also support with visa sanctions. But the last thing our family would like is to have anything affected to the people of Rwanda. I think maybe Peter can add a little bit more to on the Magnitsky.
Yeah, just very briefly. So the U.S. Treasury has primary jurisdiction over making the determination of whether to apply the act and to whom. There's input by the State Department. This isn't something that the family has or that I have been active in pursuing for various reasons, but others have. And it's not something that one lobbies, but we're tracking it, and we're looking forward to seeing what the resolution is, and we're hoping that the decisions will be made sooner rather than later.
Yes, and one thing that can support us for the Magnitsky and to move forward with the Magnitsky sanctions for a brave senator to ask for the administration on where their investigation of these people is. And so I think that's why we need the support of President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and the entire Biden administration to support our family and to also support human rights as they have promised.
And the next question leads right off your statement, Anais. The question is, any idea as to why President Biden has remained quiet? Peter, I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah, I'll just speak generally or broadly. I think in these kinds of matters, and again, many of us on this call have done this in other contexts. The initial approach of the US government is always to try to work diplomatically and sometimes through quiet diplomacy to see what kind of communications and actions might be persuasive to bring somebody unlawfully detained back to the United States. As all of you know, I'm sure there is a special presidential envoy for hostage affairs. It's an unfortunate title in some ways, but that's Roger Carstens. I've been working very closely, as has the family, with Spiha Carstens and his staff. And there is an effort in place that we hope will ramp up to try to bring Paul home. There are opportunities for President Biden to make direct appeals if necessary in the future, but I don't think now is the correct time or opportunity to have the White House directly intervene.
Thank you. The next question is about Magnitsky sanctions, but I think we really kind of already talked about that. But I will say that another group, a foundation called the Lantos Foundation, filed for Magnitsky Act sanctions to be brought against the several people from the Rwandan government. And we don't know right now how far that investigation has moved, but we think it's a really, really strong statement that the Lantos Foundation has put forth the suggestion for those sanctions. And again, as Anais said, we're looking for brave senators to keep asking and keep pushing and about the Magnitsky Act sanctions. The next two questions, I am going to turn it back over to Brian, and I think that you can best answer these next two questions and maybe wrap it up for us, unless anyone else. Actually, just one other question just came in, so Brian, I'm going to give you these two, and then we'll answer the last question after that. The two that go together, Brian, for you is, what is your view on the postponement of Paul Rusesabagina's verdict? And do you have any idea why it was postponed? Also, what is your view on Mr. Rusesabagina's alleged declaration of support to the FLN rebels who claimed a couple of attacks in Rwanda between 2018 and 2019?
Thank you, Kitty, and thank you to the questioner too. In terms of the postponement of the verdict, I think Kate put it best. We can't know why this verdict was postponed. It may be technical reasons that they weren't able to get the verdict together. It may be political reasons, because everything surrounding this case is political and has to go through Paul Kagame's office. There are just so many possibilities. Our biggest concern with this postponement, though, is it is more weeks or months of Paul's life that he will be spending in jail, and that he will be in a state of limbo, not knowing what happens. A guilty verdict coming out allows us to move on with the efforts to get Paul freed and to hopefully push for a compassionate release in the future. The second question is something that the press has been asking correctly since the beginning, but we now have enormously more information about it. The declaration, quote unquote, declaration of support for the rebels that Paul made in a videotape. There was a Christmas videotape in which Paul came out and asked Rwandans in exile to support the FLN. I think that this is a very biased question depending on how you ask it. If you ask, why did Paul support the rebels, or why did Paul support the terrorists, you are buying the Rwandan government story, and they are alone in telling this story, that the FLN is a rebel, quote unquote, terrorist group that committed these 3 attacks. The information that we have gained as this year has gone on, both from people in Paul's party and also from the trial, shows no evidence of these attacks happening. The Rwandan government provided no credible evidence that the attacks happened or that this group was affiliated with the attacks. There were no witnesses except for the co-accused, and most of them admitted in court that their testimony was coerced, often under torture. More importantly, though, when Paul made that statement that he supported the FLN, and that is a statement that Paul made on tape, his belief was that the FLN was a group of Rwandans who were in the Congo, young Rwandans, and their goal was to defend other Rwandan exiles and refugees in the Congo against regular attacks from the Rwandan government. Paul made that statement of support for a group that had joined the MRCD, a coalition political party that Paul was a part of in 2018. They believed the FLN was a self-defense force. The leaders of the MRCD and Paul believed it was a self-defense force at that point in time. And they acted on that, and Paul's support was based on that. But in 2020, when the FLN's leadership changed and they realized, the MRCD leaders realized they weren't sure where the FLN was going, they dropped the FLN from their party. The FLN was very briefly a part of Paul's party, affiliated with them. They were dropped when there was any hint that they were going to engage in violence. But Paul Rusesabagina never believed that the FLN was an organization that would attack civilians. He believed it was an organization defending against the Rwandan military. And put into that context, that explains the entirety of that tape, and it is not what the Rwandan government wants us to believe it is. Kitty, I think you said there's one more question before we close, so I'll hold off.
There's one more question, and I'm going to read it, but I want to preface it with a little news update. One of the things about Paul's case is there are many, many very powerful people who will privately say, this is crazy, this is horrible, somebody needs to do something about it. And there are very few people who are willing to actually step up and do something about it. And I will say that yesterday on Twitter, former Senator and former Governor Sam Brownback called on President Kagame directly to release Paul, and in a very powerful and straightforward way, which is what we need other people around the world, including Hollywood celebrities, to do. And that leads me into the last question, which is, given the success of Hollywood films, are there any Hollywood celebrities that have spoken out or that could be approached? And Peter, maybe if you want to just talk about that briefly, and then we will wrap up, and we want to really thank everybody for coming. Peter, do you want to?
Yeah, let me just observe two things. First, Terry George, the director of the film Hotel Rwanda, has written several op-eds in the Wall Street Journal, I think the Washington Post, in support of Paul and calling for his immediate release. Don Cheadle, who portrayed Paul in the movie, has also publicly supported Paul. I would simply say, stay tuned, because I think you're going to see a lot more support from that community and a lot more public support and efforts from that community to support Paul and call for his immediate release.
Thank you. And I think Karina and Anais want to add something before we head out. Go ahead, Karina and Anais.
Yes, just want to add that in addition to Terry George and Don, who supported our family too, we wanted to specifically thank Tom Zollner, who co-wrote about my father's autobiography, Another in Men, who's been also supporting our family and writing a lot. If you haven't seen, he just published an op-ed in the Washington Post yesterday. And then Kiri Pearson as well, the author of the Hotel Rwanda, has been writing an op-ed in CNN. So we're just very thankful for everybody who's been part of Dad's life in the past and who are continuing to support him today.
Thank you so much. And thanks for adding about Kier and Tom. And those are two particularly important voices because they were two of the voices that told Paul's story to the outside world. And we really thank them. We thank all of you for listening to the press conference today. And thank you for paying attention to Paul's case. We appreciate the spotlight that the international journalists have put on the case. And we think that that's what's hopefully keeping Paul alive. Thanks very much. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.